Nervous system has a nervous word in it. So I don't think we all should be very serious about this word, although nervous system is tough, lengthy, but equally very, what you can say, very interesting to go for. Okay. Now, when we go for classification of nervous system, what it comes to our mind, the first thing is it has been classified into two broad categories. One is called as the central nervous system. The other is the peripheral nervous system. And we all had been studying it since our school days that the central nervous system basically consists of brain and the spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system mainly has the sensory and the motor part. Now, there is a connection between the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system through the sensory and the motor parts of it. So how is it connected? The sensory is the one which sends the information. Okay. So central nervous system receives the information through the sensory peripheral nervous system, which could be anything. It can be the sensory receptors located throughout your body, deep into your structures, or deep into the tissues. So you actually are aware of your surroundings. You get to see your surroundings. You hear about it. You kind of maintain a balance of yourself. So all type of sensory inputs, whether it's tactile, it is of proprioception or movement, or whether it is of any pain, even all these informations are sent to the central nervous system. And what does the central nervous system does? Central nervous system integrates, receives these inputs, integrates it, something like how your CPU works in your computers. So it takes up the input, processes those inputs, and based on that inputs, it starts sending an output. And this output is sent to the motor system, okay, or what we call as the motor peripheral nervous system. Now, this is motor to where? Motor to the muscles, to the glands. So, any response which the central nervous system has to get, it is sending the information to the motor system. Now, coming to the sensory sensations, the sensory part of it, how many types of sensations do we have? We have two types. What is that? One is the special sensations, which you have studied from your school days, that there are five, important special senses like vision, audition, olfaction, gustation, and the one which we say from the vestibular apparatus, where we maintain the posture and the balance. Then what about the general senses? The general senses are the senses which are coming from your somatic systems and from the deep structures. Okay. When coming to the motor, where, as I said, the central nervous system, if it wants to send its output, it sends via the motor system. And where is this output going to go? It is going to go to the somatic motor responses and through the autonomic motor responses. Then, as I have said the general sensations, we can divide them as the somatic sensations, which are coming from the body parts, maybe like tactile sensations. If somebody has touched you, is there any pressure around, vibration, or it can be pain or temperature, any sort of somatic sensations that comes under the general sensations. Then sensations coming from your viscera, like from your stomach, bloating of your stomach, a pain through the visceral organs, even they come under the general sensations. So this is a broad way to classify the nervous system. Now, if you come to the motor autonomic responses have been basically classified into two systems. One is the sympathetic outflow and the other is parasympathetic outflow. We'll go into detail about it as we have a lecture planned already exclusively for autonomic motor responses, or you can say exclusively for the parasympathetic and sympathetic innervations. Okay. Now, this is a picture which shows as what forms our peripheral nervous system and what forms our central nervous system. So as you see here, what forms our peripheral nervous system? The nerves, the peripheral nerves, whether they are sensory or the motor, they form our peripheral nervous system. We find a word here called as ganglion. What is ganglion? Ganglion is the collection of cell bodies outside the central nervous system. So what are they called inside the central nervous system? Inside the central nervous system, a collection of cell bodies, they are called as nucleus. Okay. So central nervous system, as we have studied before, what it is, it mainly consists of the brain. The brain again can be divided as the cortical structures or the subcortical structures, and then we have the spinal cord, which is running around through the vertebral column. So this basically gives an overview as what is peripheral nervous system and what is central nervous system. Now, what you see here, it will take some time for you to understand. So don't get worried with this diagram. This diagram I have taken from Guyton, and this beautifully depicts the somatosensory axis of the central nervous system. So the figure shows the somatic portion of the sensory system, which transmits the sensory informations from the receptors of the entire body surface and from the deep structures. So we are getting the sensory informations from where? We are getting from the skin. And what are these? These are the receptors. So we will have a separate lecture about the somatosensory receptors, where we talk about their classifications, their names, their properties, well in detail. So for time being, you just remember that the somatosensory axis or the somatosensory sensations, they are coming from either from the deeper structures or from the periphery. It can come from the skin, as you see here. So we have different categories of somatosensory receptors for different modalities of sensations. So if it is touch, we have Meissner's corpuscles. If it is pressure, we have the Pacinian corpuscles. Free nerve endings are for pain and temperature. Okay. Now coming to the deeper structures, like in muscles, we have the muscle spindles, who are the sensors there. What are they sensing? The change in the length of the muscle fibers and that rate of change of length in the muscle fibers. We have Golgi tendon apparatus, which is present in the tendinous part of the muscle. And what are they doing? They are again sensing the change in the tension of the muscles. Then deep to the joints, we have kinesthetic receptors or the proprioceptors. So what are these proprioceptors doing? They are going to send the information about the position of your body, whether you are standing, sitting, walking, dancing, whatever is the posture of your body, you are actually going to get the information about it through these proprioceptors. Okay. Now, what happens to all these informations which are coming from the somatosensory part of it? Okay. So these informations, they go to different levels. They enter into the central nervous system and they immediately go to different areas where the first stoppage of them, they actually make a transit that they are going. The first is they meet to the spinal cord. They go at the spinal cord level. Then they go to the brainstem area, which basically is made up of three structures, which is medulla, pons, and midbrain. On its way through the reticular system, this is, in the brainstem, we have a reticular system. Again, let me tell you, reticular system itself is one separate topic, and we will be discussing about it in the near future. Now, when these informations are passing through the spinal cord, they go into different areas. You can say at different levels. They first enter to the spinal cord through the sensory part of it. They go as ascending tracts. They go to the brainstem area. While their journey to the brainstem area, they do have communications with nearby structures like something like cerebellum. Then what happens? They go to the subcortical structure, which is the thalamus. Thalamus is also called as the relay station for somatosensory axis. Thalamus acts as a relay station. So all that you have to remember is in physiology, other than other functions of thalamus, thalamus is a relay station for all the somatosensory informations. Then what happens? From the thalamus, they go to their respective areas, which have been mapped into our somatosensory cortex. Okay. Now, this is what is called as somatosensory axis. So what did I tell you previously? Central nervous system receives the information. How does it receive? Via the sensory input. And how this sensory input is actually made up of? It is made up of the sensory receptors, the sensory fibers, and then the tracts which are taking this information higher up to the cortex. Then I have told you that sensations are actually made up of how, we have divided the sensations as general sensations and special sensations. So the special sensations, why are they so special about it? Because they make you realize about the world around you. How do you do that? When you see through your eyes, the nearby vision, through vision, you are going to see where you are, what you are trying to do, all that. Okay. Then what is happening? The next is you get to see what? Olfaction. What is olfaction? Olfaction is the property that you get to smell. You smell the surrounding, whether it's a good or the bad. That all depends on your experience about it. Then audition. You kind of hear the sounds. People speak to each other. They hear each other's sounds. They listen to music. They listen to talks. They listen to other stuffs, So this audition is a special sensations. And as I've told you, the sense of balance by the vestibular system, which is located near to your cochlea, near to the ear. There is a system called as vestibular system. And this system is important for the sense of balance and equilibrium. Then comes the gustation or the taste sensation, which probably is done by our tongue. And we all know that we all depend, how the food is tasting. It all depends on what type of taste are we receiving. So we define a food to be good food or bad food depending on to the smell of the food and the taste of it. Okay. So these all sensations, they are special because another thing what is peculiar about them is that all of them are located in your head and neck area. Okay. Then comes the general sensations. General sensations, they may elicited in different parts of your body, as I told you. They may come from the skin. They may come from the deeper structures, like from the viscera, which we call as the visceral sensations, or they may come from your muscles, joints, tendons, ligaments. So it's kind of repetition what I have told you in the previous slide about it. So for your knowledge, let us just revise it again. General sensations are the sensations which are coming from different parts of your body. And they can be classified into different types of it. Can be tactile, thermo, proprioception, pain, all these type of sensations. The one which is coming from the skin or the subcutaneous tissue, muscles, joints, ligaments, they are called as somatic sensations. The one which are coming from the viscera or the deeper part of your body, they are called as visceral sensations. Now, we have finished, what did we finish? We have finished the somatosensory part of it. Okay, how we have seen how the somatosensory axis is sending the information to the central nervous system. Now, let us come to the skeletal motor nerve axis. What is this skeletal motor nerve axis? Skeletal motor nerve axis of the central nervous system is for controlling the skeletal muscle contractions. Okay, and something which is very parallelly, coming through along with these skeletal muscle motor system is the autonomic nervous system, which is controlling the smooth muscles, glands, and other internal bodies. Mind it, many students do get confused that motor may be for smooth muscles also. No, skeletal motor nerves or somatic motor nerves, they are purely for the skeletal muscles. Okay, the one which is going to supply to your smooth muscles, to your glands, will be via the autonomic regulations, where there may be two divisions. One can be parasympathetic, other can be the sympathetic. Okay, now what is happening here? The skeletal muscle information. So what we are seeing here is actually a skeletal muscle motor nerve axis. So what is happening here? Your central nervous system has received the information, and it has received the information somewhere in the somatosensory cortex. So there is a talk between the somatosensory cortex and the motor cortex. Okay. So never think that motor is independently taking the decision. Actually, the motor areas, which primarily consist of your primary motor areas, premotor areas, supplementary motor areas, they actually make a conference, kind of a conference. They talk to each other. With whom? They talk to the neighboring structures, which can be subcortical structures like basal ganglia. They can talk with cerebellum here. You can see. They can even have a talk with the somatosensory cortex. Talk in the senses. They are going to exchange their inputs, via a language, what we call as the action potential. So over here, let me bring it very clear to you. Although I'm not covering action potential here, but what is the prerequisite for you to start the central nervous system is you should be thorough with action potential, membrane potentials. Okay, so you should be thorough with what membrane potential is, what basically we call them as resting membrane potential, the potential which you record across a cell of a cell when it is at a resting condition, or an action potential which is elicited once we give a threshold stimulus and which is elicited in an excitable tissues, which can be the muscles and the nerves. So what is a prerequisite? What should I know before I actually take a dip into the central nervous system physiology part is that you should have little bit knowledge about the membrane potential. So what did I say? The information which was going to the sensory cortex was through the somatosensory axis. And you know what in language it was being sent? It was sent in the form of action potentials. So your nervous system makes a communication only in one language. It doesn't speak in English. It doesn't speak in any international language. It does only in one language, and that is action potential. That's a change in the membrane potential. Okay. So when I say that the motor area is in conversation with different organs, maybe the basal ganglia, maybe the cerebellum, maybe the somatosensory part, that means they are sharing the informations via the nervous system. Okay. Now, what does this motor area do? Your cortex, the sensory cortex, which was here, had received the information. A planning was done. You had kind of processed that information. You have planned that information. Now what you're trying to do, you're going to plan an action. And action means motor. Motor means action. Okay. So that action that has to be taken has to be, a command has to come to your effector organ. And who can be your effector organ? In case of skeletal motor nerve axis, it is the skeletal muscles. Okay. And if in case of glands, it can be your autonomic fibers. So these informations, as they descend down, they again are following a track. One thing let me make very clear to you. Nervous system, whole of organization, as you unfold it, it's so miraculous. It's so amazing to know that the nature has never done anything wrong. There is not going to be any short circuit, no cross connections. So beautifully it is planned, so beautifully it is mapped. So as we go down the course of central nervous system, we'll appreciate it more and more. So what did I say? That the information, the command which has to come down to the final effector, which is your skeletal muscle, it comes down through descending tracts. So that is also a part of the motor system, which we will be taking in the next course. As you go on, since this whole of this course has been designed in such a way that we are trying to cover up all the competencies which are there mentioned in the NMC site for UG curriculum volume 1. Okay. So, but it's better to clear our concepts than trying to finish up all the concept based competencies, whatever it is. Okay, come here. What does we do? So the information, the commands which are coming down, they're coming through the descending tracts. And what is happening? They are going through their specific pathway. So you see here something written as alpha motor fibers. So alpha motor neurons are the final common pathway through which your muscle fibers are going to get the information. So what do? They go to the skeletal muscle, and if they get an information that they should make it contract, they go for excitation and they give the contraction of the muscle. So this is the whole axis. What is it? It's a whole axis of skeletal motor nerve of the nervous system. Now, as I was telling you, along with the somatic motor system, there is something parallelly running. So if somatic motor system is supplying to your skeletal muscle, who is going to supply your smooth muscles and the glands? It is the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is the one which is going to supply to where? To the smooth muscles, to the glands, to the viscera. So what are their divisions? They have two main divisions. So when we actually talk of autonomic nervous system, basically we concentrate on these two. But for your information, let me tell you, there is another division which we call as enteric nervous system. And that enteric nervous system is present in the GIT. Okay. So sympathetic, since school days we have been knowing that sympathetic is for flight and flight reaction. So think that you are in a situation which is dangerous. You're going in a busy road and what you find behind you is a bull. I don't think any one of us will try to stop by and say hello to the bull and wait for it to shake its head, right? So what do? I run, I flight, I take a flight. It's not that you take a helicopter or a plane, but you just run out of that situation. So what happens at that time? There are going to be different changes in your body. You definitely will have an increased heart rate. You will have increased respiratory rate. You're going to run around. You're going to use your skeletal muscle. So your skeletal muscle gets a lot of blood supply. You are not thinking of digestion, no micturition, no defecation. All you think is to run and save yourself. So that situation is basically a response due to the sympathetic outflow. Okay, sympathetic is the one which has been pressed. It is pressed when you are in a panic state. Now coming to the origin. So as I'm telling you, autonomic is not only these two, columns of differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic. There is a whole lot of stuff that we should know about them. To give a small summary as what they are, let us know where they originate. Sympathetic originates from thoracolumbar preganglionic axons. So there is a thoracolumbar outflow for sympathetic origin. Now coming to parasympathetic, what is it for? It is for rest and digest. A very nice party was there last night. You had been into that party, you had been invited, and there were hundreds of dishes, and you wanted to try out everything of it, and you actually had some of them, although not thinking about your GI responses, but you actually had a good amount of food. Now, what are you going to do? Your body has to digest whatever you have eaten. Now, this rest and digest response is basically through your parasympathetic stimulation. What happens during this condition? Are we going to think of flight? Are we going to run around? No. We are going to think to digest whatever good food we had. So your blood flow to the GI increases, all the secretions to GI increases, salivation increases, defecation, micturition, all the reflexes will be quite enough you can do, isn't it? Your heart rate need not go to a very high rate where the situation of emergency is there. You can have a good normal resting condition, with the respiratory and the heart rate. So there can be some changes to the pupillary also. You can go for pupillary constriction. So as I've told you, when you come to the course of autonomic nervous system, we'll talk in detail about it. But there are some major differences. I think you should always know at the start of it. Okay. And these differences might be, it. It's just a repetition. What is that? Coming to their structure. Okay. Both preganglionic, as I have told you, what is ganglia? It is a place where you have the cell bodies, cell bodies, collection of cell bodies outside the central nervous system. We call it as ganglion. So if the nerve fiber is arising from the ganglion, definitely it has the cell body in the ganglion. Okay. So preganglionic fiber of parasympathetic axons are longer and the postganglionic are short. How about your sympathetic? Your sympathetic is short. The preganglionic fiber is short, but the postganglionic is quite long enough. What is good about sympathetic, that sympathetic forms a chain very close to the vertebra. Okay, we call it as preganglion, chain, sympathetic chain very close to the vertebra. We'll talk about that in detail. But what is that major difference, anatomical difference that we have to know? One is of the origin, that is, one is of craniosacral outflow origin, the other is of thoracolumbar. Both pre and post ganglionic fibers of parasympathetic are quite, the preganglionic is long and the post ganglionic is short. Whereas in case of sympathetic, you have, we can say the post ganglionic fibers, they are arising from the chain fibers, so they are quite long enough. How about the neurotransmitters? Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter for parasympathetic. So please remember it, whether it's the pre or the post ganglionic nerve fibers, acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter. Okay. How about sympathetic? Sympathetic pre can be, if the fibers, they are coming from the preganglionic fibers, when they come and they give the second order neurons, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. But at the postganglionic end, it can be norepinephrine, it can be epinephrine, or it can be acetylcholine in some exceptions. Now, as I've told, the responses of parasympathetic is rest and digest. Sympathetic is for flight and fright reaction. Now, what is the basic feature of nervous system? What do I do here? This is where, there are different mechanisms by which the neurons produce signals. So, we see that in nervous system, as I've told you, the way how it communicates between different structures or different areas of the body is by its mechanism of producing the signals. And the signals are nothing but your action potentials. Okay, these are actually membrane potentials. But there is a pattern of connection between the nerve cells. We just don't make a cross connections. We just not make any connections here and there. It's not that I wish to have a connection here, I'll make multiple of it. I don't wish to have a connection over there, I won't do that. That's not the story. There is always a pattern of connection. Okay? There is a relationship of different patterns of interconnection to different types of behaviors. Okay? So it may be like, there may be a pattern of connection if I am liking something and I'll try to do it again and again. That becomes a habit for me, a habitual effort for me. Then there may be connections made where I did not like anything. I had an aversion for it. So I'll form a memory about that aversion. So next time when I come, oh, I don't like these things, I may have a different behavior for that object. Okay? And there is a means by which the neurons and the connections are modified by experience. This is a very good thing to understand. Something what we call as synaptic plasticity. Okay? So we must have heard it from our childhood, where our parents, teachers, and the well-wishers would have told you, please revise. Please revise. What is this revision going to do? This revision is going to make your synapses in a facilitative manner. It's going to facilitate them. So even a small thing will trigger a lot of responses. That's like what we say, you're going to form a memory. You're going to form a lot of connections. You're going to increase the number of synapses so that this becomes a permanent memory for you and you can remember it through your life long. So when we started, learning how to ride a bicycle, we probably were aware of everything we were doing, right from holding the handle, pedaling it, putting a brake. But what happened after a few days or few months? We almost became unaware of it. Why? Because we have learned it. Okay, so in layman's word, what you call as learned, in case of nervous system, you call it as synaptic plasticity or facilitation at your synapses, which probably had made it into a permanent memory. What is the two functions your nervous system does? I have been telling it from the first slide onward, and that is processing of information. Integrative. Integrate the information. Take the information, think about it, make a decision, give the command. And this whole thing is through a well connected neural system. Okay. The other is storage of information, what you call as the memory. So we don't try to learn everything every time we do. You must have learned it from your childhood, how to pick up your pencil and write about A, B, C, D, and whatever it is. You don't go on learning at every stage. You have learned them how to take the strokes. You have learned how to paint. And now, as you were doing it, there was a memory formed about it. Okay. So there is a role of synapses here. When we think of the memory, there is a huge role of the synapses. And synapses itself is another topic which I think we need to spend a time on. It's worth it to spend the time over there. Why? Because there is so many features about the synapses, and you learn them. You learn you learn many things about the synapses, how it is, how the information is sent from one synapse to the another. What are we trying to do with those informations? What if I do the same thing again and again? Are we going to remember it? How my body is going to react to that information next time? Okay. So I can tell you one example. You had a childhood friend. You really liked your childhood friend, but you had a memory along with your childhood friend. You used to play together and do a lot of stuff. But as time went, you got separated. Okay. But even though you were separated, you were not seeing each other, you were not communicating to each other, still you had a memory about your friend. Next time, maybe after 10 years, 15 years, you get to meet your friend. What are the things you do? You recognize your friend. So there is a facial memory. You kind of remember his face. Then once you meet him, everything comes as a flashback. You start remembering the good time you had spent with your friend. So how is it happening? What did I do for so many years? You actually had stored the memory about your friend in your brain somewhere. So that is the function of nervous system. I think we are human because we have emotions, and our emotions definitely is related with a lot of our memory with our emotions. I can have a bad memory about an emotions. If I have a bad memory about you, I don't like you, I'm not going to smile and be happy to see you. Okay. So my behavior is definitely based on the information I'm retrieving from my central nervous system. When you go to levels of central nervous system, there is something we should know, that there are 3 such levels. If I go from top to down or down to top, you can take any way. If you're going from down to top, the first level is the spinal cord. That's a local area. And lot of informations, lot of reflexes, they happen at the spinal cord level itself. It's like some of informations to the spinal cord and decisions for certain reflexes, they are taken at the spinal cord level. Then next comes the subcortical level, where you have the structures which are present in the subcortex. They may be involved, in taking up the information or giving up the command. Then the highest is the cortical level. I have heard a professor telling that cortex is nothing but your bank of memory. It's kind of storing all the information. So you have the memory somewhere very well stored in your central nervous system. Now, subcortical region, what is it and what is the cortical region? Look here, this is the cortical region. And these structures, which structures? These structures, what are their names? If you go from down, this is the spinal cord, it ascends up as the brainstem. If you go from down to top, okay, medulla comes first, then comes the pons, then comes the midbrain, okay, then comes your relay stations, the thalamus, then comes different structures which may form the part of the basal ganglia, okay, like caudate nucleus, globus pallidus. Basal ganglia again is a big topic, and I think there are different nuclei of basal ganglia, structures, functions, lot to study. So we'll do it in the subsequent lectures about it. So these structures which you are seeing on your screen, they form the subcortical organs. Okay. Now, and what forms your spinal cord? You already know the spinal cord. Anyway, I'll be showing the section of spinal cord here on. But when it comes to the different way of studying it, when we say it is going ventrally, anterior nuclei, posterior nuclei, or the superior one or inferior one, how are we going to orient this? So this picture is actually showing you the orientation. for central nervous system. So if this is your brain, if it is your nose, nose is like front. So front of it, so the part which is towards your nose, the front part, we call them as anterior structures. The one which is at the back of your neck, we call, or behind, we call them as posterior. The one structures which are at the top, we call them as superior or above. Then the one which is going down, we call them as inferior. So in the subsequent lectures, when we are telling the nuclei is a posterior nucleus or anterior nucleus, we actually are making an orientation in this way. Okay. Then what do we call as rostral? What is called as rostral? The front one, this axis. Okay. This is called as the rostral. Back is called as caudal. Okay. Then something is called as dorsal and ventral. What is dorsal and ventral? Ventral is front part, as if, your front part of your body, we call it as ventral. The back part of your body is called as the dorsal. Okay. So this is how you orient yourself when in different lectures or in different books you find about the different structures mentioned that this is present in the rostral part or this is present in the caudal part. Then, the word brain, what is it? So what have I been doing till now? We were trying to classify how the central nervous system has been classified broadly. Then we went into different structures, different sensations, different pathways. Since it's an introductory class, we are kind of trying to familiarize ourselves with different terminologies, different structures of the central nervous system. So what is brain? Brain is actually an Anglo-Saxon word, and this is used for the tissue which is found well within your skull. Okay, you can hold up yourself with your hand and feel what you have. The bony structure is actually the skull, and inside the skull you have this tissue, what you call as the brain. Okay, and it is floating in a fluid, what you call as the cerebrospinal fluid. What is so good about the brain is it has almost symmetrical halves, two halves of it. I can have a left side of the heart and the right side of the heart. And you know what? The right and the left, they are so well connected to each other. And how they are connected? They are connected through different connections, what you call as corpus callosum. Okay, so we'll deal about it later. What do you about the structures? When you look at the brain, let me see if I have, look up here. If you look at brain like this, what is it? I do have somewhere, there is grooves, somewhere there is sulcs. So what exactly has happened is the outer structure of the brain, which mainly consists of thin folded layer of nerve tissues, we call them as the cerebral cortex. It may have grooves or called sulci. Sulci is deep down. There is a good way to remember sulcus. Sulcus means deep down, means when we are sad, we sulk about something. We sulk about them. We say, oh, he's sulking. Sulking means down. So you should remember that the folds which are downward, which has gone deep down, they are called as sulci. And the bumps, the one which have been kind of erased, you can say little bumpy one, outer one, they are called as the gyri or the gyrus. Okay. What we have to remember now. So the brain looks something like this. This is a pictorial part of different lobes of a brain. So I hope now we can identify. This is the spinal cord. Here is the brainstem. Deep inside is the subcortical structure, and outer part of it is forming the cortex. What you see here, something leafy like structure, nicely covering, that is your cerebellum. Now, since we are talking about the cortex, what are the different lobes of it? So what did I say? This part, towards your nose, this is called as the frontal lobe. The one which is at the back, behind, is called as occipital lobe. Okay. Then near to your ear. So can you all just touch your ear? Near to your ear, the lobe of cortex which is present is called as the temporal lobe. Okay. And top of that, when we go, little up ahead, you nicely, you can say, cares yourself, put your hand over the head and just move it down. What you are doing, actually you are cursing yourself, and what you're trying to hold is you are passing through the parieto-occipital area. Okay. So we have occipital lobe, behind, frontal lobe, front, temporal lobe, near to your ear, and the top part. Okay, when you put your hands over the head, what that part is, the parietal lobe. Now parietal, so these all are the lobes. As I've told you, the bumps are called as the gyrus, and the one which have gone deep down, there is grooves. We call them as sulcus. Remember, sulcus. So what are there are actually three important sulcus we should remember. What is that? One is called as the central sulcus. And it is very important landmark for you to remember which side is somatosensory cortex and which side is my motor cortex. This all depends on if you know where your post-central sulcus, not post-central, the central sulcus is present. So you have the central sulcus, we have the lateral sulcus, and we have one more sulcus, what we call as parieto-occipital sulcus. So basically, if you remember three sulcus, you'll have a good landmark to understand which lobe you are actually talking about. Okay. Now there is, based on their origin, in some books we find, these words as mesencephalon, diencephalon, telencephalon. So these all are based on how we what you call as the development of nervous system. So that's again a different topic. It will take a lot of our time to explain, but let me just tell you that we have divided the brain depending on whether it's in the front part, the forebrain. Forebrain has been divided into telecephalon. Tele means outer part. Diencephalon means somewhere inside. So diencephalon is having somebody is looking at them, and the one who is looking at them, they're looking through the telescope. So remember that. Okay. So telecephalon is looking through the diencephalon. Okay. So that is how telecephalon is present on the peripheral part, diencephalon on the middle part. Okay. Then comes the midbrain area, which we call as mesencephalon. Okay. Then comes the hindbrain. Hindbrain again has been metencephalon or the myencephalon. Okay. So hindbrain, we have this metencephalon, myencephalon, and then ultimately your spinal cord is evolving and it is going down. So probably we'll have a lecture of it as how the nervous system develops. Let me see if it is there in the competency. We'll try to put it. Otherwise, I can take a class on development of nervous system also. Now, this is how I look, What did I say? We have to remember a sulcus, central sulcus, okay? So near to the central sulcus, this side and that side, the post-central gyrus. This is the post-central gyrus. This is the pre-central gyrus. So area ahead of the central sulcus is called as the motor cortex. And behind the sulcus, central sulcus, is what you call as the sensory part, somatosensory cortex. And I need not repeat it, because now I think all of you must be aware of what is the lobes, whom do we call as frontal lobe, whom do we call as occipital, temporal, parietal, and all that. See, this is a picture of a live tissue of the brain. Okay, so you can see here there are sulcus, the grooves, and there are bumps. The bumps are called as the gyri, and the sulcus, deep down grooves are called as the sulci. Then there are certain common terms. You keep on hearing them when you go to learn central nervous system. Gray matter. What is gray matter? Collection of cell bodies within the central nervous system. Then what is the white matter? It is collection of axons within the central nervous system. Then what are tracts? I was telling when we were talking about the somatosensory axis or somatomotor axis, they all were coming, the information was going up and coming down through the tracts. Tracts are nothing but bundles of axons who are having a common origin and a common termination. They are called as tracts. And they have been divided into ascending tracts who are taking the information up to the CNS. Then descending tracts who are bringing the commands from the central nervous system to your target organs. Okay. Then we have white matter, which is connecting the central nervous system antero-posteriorly or maybe posterior-anteriorly. What we call as association fibers. Then there can be white matters who are going to collect here, as I was telling, right? That human brains have two definite symmetrical hemispheres or two different parts. And these two different parts of them, they are connected through the white matter. And this white matter is called as commissures. What do I call them as? Commissures. So corpus callosum is a commissure. Now, one thing you have to know is if I do a section of the cortex and I do a section of spinal cord, how is it going to be anatomically different? How can I identify it? One thing that you have to know, in the spinal cord, your gray matter, which is collection of cell bodies, is centrally located. As periphery, we have the white matter, right? But when we do a section, so this is a section, the frontal section, what do I see? This part, can you see this color? So this color is actually showing the gray area. And these parts are called as the white area. Deep into the white matter are located different subcortical nuclei, or you can say subcortical structures. So subcortical structures have been embedded. They have just come and, get themselves into those white matter. They have been planted into the white matter. So what is the difference that we see? When you do a section of spinal cord, gray matter is central, white matter is peripheral. But as you go to the cortex, look the beauty. Look at it. As you go to the cortex, outer is gray, inner is white. Again, coming to certain common terms, I was telling near the brainstem, there are reticular formation. These reticular formations are actually very important for life. You kind of are awake, alert, aroused because of activation of reticular informations, or RAS we call it. Then you go to sleep because RAS gets off. It's something like a switch to your brain. You put it on, you are alert. You put it off, you go for sleep. Other than that, reticular has got connections with the spinal cord also, and it is important in posture and equilibrium. Then there is something called as nerves. What are these nerves? Nerves are collection of axons outside the central nervous system. Tracts inside Schwann cells. They are the one which are present around the nerves and important for the myelinations. Oligodendrocytes, they are around the nerve fibers inside the central nervous system, and they are important for myelination over there. So these are, common terms which you might come across when you're trying to go into the deeper part of the central nervous system. Okay. Now, as I have told let me just have a brief classification as what is gray matter, what is white matter. Gray matter, it can be present in the cortex, in the nucleus. White matter, maybe the one which is, the tracts are there, they are myelinated, heavily myelinated, they form the white matter. Or your association fibers or your commissural fibers, they form the white matter. Okay. Then tracts, I have told you, they can be again classified into ascending and descending tracts. And when you come here about the gray, cortex and nucleus. So I think it's quite the same repetition as we have learned about it before. Now, this was my last slide. I thank you all for hearing to me as what I'm doing. Now I'll come to you. In case you have any query, you can put up your questions.
The whole purpose of physiology, ma'am, was to fill the gap which was not possible in the time frame which you get in normally in the college days, like in the daytime when you are attending the college. So it is basically like some because it's so deep and like you require around, like, in fact only CNS it requires 60. I think we'll have a session of around 60 hours would be there. So that we are also not sure whether that will be more than enough or not. So right now we are also in the meantime we are developing our website and everything, and like we are still in that process. The technical aspects are still in the process, but as the college has already started, we have already started this session with few of us and few of the students already joining the course, and some of them attending as a trial session today. So that's I'll just share with you basically like how the whole course will look like. So let me share this page. So as you can see, like when you go to basically physiology map, and then you go to all courses, there you can see like this on the right side you will see the Indian, it's the central nervous system for Indian students. Here you can pay through INR. That's why like we have said kept it as Indian students out there. So I'll ask ma'am to go through the course curriculum, exactly what and topics you will be covering in this particular course on central nervous system. Ma'am, can you just
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So as you can see here, I have designed this course basically keeping in mind the different competency based, you can say the competencies which are meant for central nervous system as per to the NMC. Okay. But in otherwise also I have followed Guyton, textbook of medical physiology by Guyton, while framing this course curriculum. So today we had the introductory session to nervous system, definitely. And then we are going to introduce you to different resources, which we are doing right now. Then as we move on, we have basically divided into sensory part, the motor part, and higher centers functions. Okay. So sensory, we are going to start with neurons, types of neurons, then classification of neurons, then we go to neuroglias, types, classifications, and all that. As I was telling you, I'll go to synapses, their types, properties. We'll talk about synaptic plasticity also. Then neurotransmitters, different types of them, excitatory, inhibitory. Then we'll go to sensory receptors, the somatosensory receptors, their types, their properties, very, very important. Then the different sensations, how they are being carried by the tracts, maybe tactile, proprioception, vibration, stereognosis, and all that sensations, how they are being taken up. Then the pain sensation, pain and temperature, we'll talk about here itself. Then there are 7 lessons we have done in motor system. So we'll start with the muscle sensors, their functions, their like muscle spindle, Golgi tendon organ, alpha gamma co-activation, then their role in different reflexes, maintenance of tone, then how do I classify reflexes? There are different ways of classifying reflexes. Then we'll go to descending tracts. We'll talk about the pyramidal tracts, extrapyramidal tracts, and we'll also talk about descending analgesic pathway in pain up above. Then the vestibular apparatus. Why I have plain vestibular apparatus here is because vestibular apparatus plays a very important role in maintenance of posture and equilibrium. So it's best that we place it here and then go to posture and equilibrium. Then we'll go to spinal cord, lower motor neuron lesions, then spinal cord lesions, what is hemisection, what are the somatosensory disturbances we will find over there. Then comes our higher centers, and we are going to deal with them as under the headings of their anatomical structures, connections, functions, and in case there is any applied aspects, what happens if there is any abnormality. So we'll be covering cerebellum, basal ganglia, cerebral cortex, hypothalamus, thalamus, and then next is we are moving to the higher functions of the brain or the intellectual functions of brain, where we will be dealing about learning, memory, memory, types of memory, speech, limbic system, connections, functions. EEG will talk about the waves, what are the meaning of each of the waves and how they are elicited, how are we going to interpret them. Then we'll go to sleep, different types of sleeps, what is the characteristic features of different types of sleeps. RAS, as I just told you, RAS is an important part of it. We'll talk there under with sleep. Then epilepsy, types, and all that features. Psychosis, dementia, again, the definition of it, how it is, what are the features of it. Then as I was telling, autonomic nervous system is also going to be discussed in detail. What I have told you is just one slide, but there are a lot many differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic, right from their origin, their insertions, their functions with different parts of your body. Then there are 2 miscellaneous topics, which will be cerebral blood flow or the CSF. Okay, both of them will go into cerebral blood flow. We'll talk about regulation, then circulation, how is it regulated? Basically in physiology, we talk about the regulation. Cerebrospinal fluid formation, circulation, any abnormalities. Then comes your special senses. Since I have covered vestibular up above, and we are going to deal with the visual, that is for vision, then auditory system, hearing, then chemical senses. Under chemical senses, we will be talking about the taste, and we are going to talk about the smell. Okay, so this is the whole of the plan for central nervous system course in physiology, ma'am.
So now that she has
Over to you.
explained, yeah. So thank you, ma'am. As you have seen that we'll be going deep into the CNS curriculum this particular half of the year. So as the courses have already started in several colleges. So we have started the classes and we are still building up the backend and the basically the website. But the main aspect, the live class, it is already developed and it is like you can all like those who have already enrolled, you will get access to the class, and those who have not, they can go ahead and click on this button and they can just basically pay a nominal fee of 2000 and then basically join in to the class. Basically you can pay if you are in India, you can pay through UPI and net banking, and there are several other ways where you can 3 or 4 ways where you can make the payment by basically like clicking on this button. So like it will take you a big, this is my test page, so you are not able to see that, but it is just normal as you buying on Amazon. It's very much similar to it, and any like online payments you have done, it is very much similar. So once you have done that, you will get access to basically the curriculum page where each of the lessons are there. So let us go into, like, for example, today's session. So this particular session, the access page will be something like this. So people who have already joined in, basically they already know exactly like how it will be. So here you will be like, as it is live classes, for today's session, you must be getting a this join in Zoom button, and then there will be post lesson, some quizzes will be there which you will have to attend, and this quizzes has been prepared by ma'am itself, and sorry, ma'am herself, and this basically you have to attempt before moving on to the next session, next lessons. So each of these lessons, they can be of 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hours, depending on the number of how much we can take care complete in 1 day. So the classes will be held on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays, and the timing will be always 6:30 to 7:30. We might have to extend some time from 7:30 to 8:30. We'll try to keep it between 6:30 to 7:30 and not go beyond that, and we'll try to be limit ourselves within that. But first few days to get you acquainted, like it might we might go beyond 7:30 to 7:45 sometimes. So everything will be like available in your course curriculum section, like once you logged in. And also, like, all the live classes, once they are over, within a day or two, like those will be available on the this particular section itself as the recorded videos. And you can so if you just miss some of the classes, you can go back and see the recorded videos out there. So this is available only for the people who are actually enrolling in the course, full course, not only on the particular live class. So live classes, this particular live class was a trial class for some of you. Initially, we might 1 or 2 classes we can allow, but beyond that, like, we'll be sticking to the people who have enrolled in the course, so that because there's like several other aspects we have to take care. So now it is like up to you to take the actions and start the course. And because next class will be again, today's Tuesday, next class will be on Thursday on I think ma'am, it will be on neurons.
We'll start with neurons.
Yeah, okay, so the next class will be on neuron and neurology. So basically, like, we'll be sharing all the details out there.
It's
uh,
neurons and neuroglia.
Yeah. So the details will be shared here. You will once you come here, you will see the details just as you saw in today's session. The details out here, the links and everything. So I'll just close this one, and yeah. So this is the whole course which is there. You can access it, and then you can also attempt the quizzes. There will be around 300 to 400 quizzes by the end of the when you reach the end of this course. So yeah, it will be like will be as and when you are attending the lesson, you will get access to the quizzes. So if you have any question, any queries regarding the system which we are using to bring this course forward to you, you can ask now itself. Yeah, I think so. Like, so I think if you have any query or if you face any issues, you can drop a mail to us at physiologymam@gmail.com, and we'll get back to you if you have face any problem. And regarding the queries, if you have, you can just go ahead there. You can like, there will be a discussion section where basically you can add the in the comment section. You can ask any questions out there. Will ma'am will try to basically answer your queries in those below that section, or in maybe in some query classes which we special query classes which we might have. So I think if you if you don't have any questions, we can end today's session. And uh, I hope so. Like, anyone, like, ma'am, do you have anything to say?
I think we have quite clearly told them about how to enroll and how to get into the course. And thank you all for joining us, and meet you in the course. Goodbye and good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Goodbye, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.